Talk IT tutorial. So this is going to be sort of a continuation of sort of what we've been doing with our games tutorials. So we're going to try and build sort of a larger application that may be more useful using the skills you've learned through the C++ course. What this one's actually going to be about, not a game as you could probably tell from the title, is a mesh model viewer. What is that? So a mesh model is effectively a set of points that we use to create 3D objects. And what we use in this one is something called a .obj file. OBJ, sorry. So mesh model viewer, why are we doing it? Learn making sure you've got your techniques, consolidate some skills. It's a lot more practical, a lot more fun, a lot more useful than some of the other course tutorials that you go through the course. So the idea of a mesh model. So in this case it's just triangles, so it's a collection that form an object, in this case a bunny that we're going to be using. I've got a link to the wiki page that helps explain it a little bit more, because I don't want to go over something which someone's already spent a lot of time and effort to actually make really readable. And just to give you an idea of what we're actually going to be using as a representation in our file is something called a face vertex mesh. So effectively we have a list of faces, and the faces contain vertex, so like a reference to a vertex, which is just a point in 3D space. And we have 3 of those, and it can create triangles. And using these triangles we can then create a bunny that looks very, very good. So that's sort of the idea of it. Why is it useful? Computer graphics, gaming, animation, 3D printing, collision detection in games. It is actually quite a useful thing to know. It's actually interactive, so I'll show it to you in a sec. Click the mouse, move it around, zoom in, zoom out, rotate. I've put the full application at the end because we only build sort of a subset of features, because it's like inherently quite mathematical. So I try to leave all the mathematical stuff for the full application, which you can have a try at yourself. But for this, we just sort of get around some C++, some GLUT, which I'll explain in a sec. So we load in the bunny, we can switch them in and out, so there's lots of other OBJ files that you can load into this and have a mess around with. Move around looking at it, we can slice it, zoom in and out. I'll show you all those features. So components of the viewer, so GLUT library for C++, so effectively it's something that allows us to interact with OpenGL through Windows. So this is sort of the website for GLUT. So GLUT is OpenGL Utility Toolkit, a Windows System Independent toolkit for writing OpenGL programs. It implements a simple windowing application programming interface API for OpenGL. So effectively it allows us to work with OpenGL to mess around with some graphics, and it works for C, C++, Fortran and Ada. That's sort of what it's all about. I guess in a sense it's quite trivial, and it may not seem that exciting, but this is something that is actually quite interesting and used. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to open Visual Studio, and I'm going to show you the application that you're going to be building effectively. It's mainly comprised of just a single file, the mesh model viewer. Then there's an object loader that we use to load in the bunny itself. So it's not huge, but I can tell you it will get quite complex once you start trying to do mathematical stuff with it, which is doing the full application that you can download. So this is the bunny. So I've just minimized it right now. I'll pull it out a little bit for you, and then what I can do is I'll zoom in. As you can see, I'm just using my mouse to turn it around, and we can display it in different things. So this is using edges, so you'll be able to see each individual triangle that it's made out of there. Faces, so it's quite a smooth looking bunny. We can also make it so it's flat, so you can see all the triangles that make it up. and then V, which is just displaying the points, the vertices, which if I zoom out, you just make it a little bit more obvious that it's a bunny. And then we can rotate the square that we build round it as well, just so that we build a square first, just so that you can start to understand the idea of 3D geometry and the points in 3D space before we start trying to mess with the bunny. And then rotate on the Z-axis. In the full application, there's loads more that this can do. If you find this and you're like, oh, this is quite easy, you can move on to the full application and have a real mess around with it. Anyway, I'll just press escape and it'll close all of that. So that is the idea of this tutorial. Hopefully you'll get quite a lot from it. Thanks for listening. Move on to lab 2, where we go up with the sort of basic setup and getting GLUT on your system. Thank you very much.